Hello, and welcome back to the Shakey Sonnet Show. I am Tootight Lautrec, the drag laureate of the Sonnetarium, and here we are once again in the Sonnetarium at the bottom of the down staircase in the permanently sequestered remainder section of an unnamed local library, which may or may not have a couple of lions couchant on the front steps, looking a little cross-eyed, like they just might be ready to let loose and unleash the snark that they've been mostly holding back for the last few sonnets. That's right. Sonnets 141 and 142 are a somewhat crisscrossy drive into the very heart of Snark City. What the narrator held back, or said he was holding back, so as to keep from appearing a mad slanderer in sonnets 139 and 140, he suddenly found tongue to utter. We, of course, don't quite believe the narrator because we've seen his playful teasing about the beloved's looks before, which, while they may not fall in line with the traditional ideals of classical beauty, are still quite bewitching, not only to the narrator, but evidently to many, 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 many others. But what was playful in my reading anyway, in sonnet 130, turns a little bit nasty here, even though I do not read this sonnet straight. Surprise, surprise. Other editors think that the narrator is saying that the beloved is actually ugly in this sonnet, but I say no. I read it as the former teasing from 130 gone a little bit testy. Don Patterson's take on these two, sonnets 141 and 142, is entirely misguided, in my opinion. He calls 141 a wretched little number, which he said a similar thing about sonnet 130, and he says that 142 is a vapid rhetorical exercise. And he believes that these two are just padding for the sequence. I say no. Emphatically no. These two sonnets are poems of a wounded, irate lover, and I think they're pretty good ones too. And once again, we have the eyes versus heart theme going here. So let's take a look at sonnet 141. Although I won't be reading from my penguin because my fountain pen splooged all over the page, and so I'll be reading from the Blakemore Evans version. 141. In faith, I do not love thee with mine eyes, for they in thee 1,000 errors note. But 'tis my heart that loves what they despise, who in despite of view is pleased to dote. Nor are mine ears with thy tongue's tune delighted, nor tender feeling to base touches prone, nor taste nor smell desire to be invited to any sensual feast with thee alone. But my 5 wits nor my 5 senses can dissuade one foolish heart from serving thee, who leaves unswayed the likeness of a man, thy proud heart's slave and vassal wretch to be. Only my plague thus far I count my gain. That she that makes me sin awards me pain. Okay, now, first quatrain, Petrarch be damned. No false representations of beauty here, just like we saw in sonnet 130. And it seems to be a similarly playful tone at first, similar to 130, until we get to they in the 1,000 errors note. And as we recall, the Latin word for errors is errare, which also means to wander, and there's a suggestion in wandering of sexual infidelity. So there's an undercurrent of besmirchment of the mistress's character here. My eyes see your faults, but my heart still loves you, seems to be what's going on in the first quatrain. And then in the second quatrain, okay, playful teasing and all, but you can stop anytime. He goes through the whole array of senses. Nor are mine ears to thy tongue's tune delighted. I don't particularly love hearing your voice. Nor tender feeling to base touches prone. And that's almost frankly sexual. Base touches, base meaning ignoble possibly, low indicating the position or the location where those touches might occur, or foundation, which is the fundament. And touch, the OED gives alternate, besides just the sense of touch, it gives alternate definitions such as blemish, stain, and taint. So it seems to be there's some taint touching going on here. And then in line 8, none of my senses desire to be invited to any sensual feast with thee alone. And alone could be with only you, or it could be in private with nobody else around. Then we get to the third quatrain, but my 5 wits nor my 5 senses. And this is something that I did not know. Apparently, besides the 5 senses that we all know, taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing, there were considered to be 5 wits too, which seemed to me quite wishy-washy in definition. But there's common wit, imagination, fantasy, estimation, and memory. But in essence, it's the mind and the heart versus the body, the 5 senses of the body. And all of this is to simply say, I know I shouldn't love you. I see I shouldn't love you. Apparently he smells he shouldn't love her. But all my 5 senses and all my 5 wits leave me when you're around, and it leaves me as just a husk of a man. My heart and I are your slave. My 5 wits nor my 5 senses can dissuade one foolish heart, my heart, from serving thee, who leaves unswayed the likeness of a man. You leave me just nothing but just the shell of the person that I once was, and I am thy proud heart's slave and vassal wretch to be. And then we get to the couplet. Only my plague thus far I count my gain. And the plague here is possibly the fever of love, possibly the mistress herself. Some editors contend that possibly there's some venereal disease thrown in there, which apparently was a tremendously rampant problem during Shakespeare's time. And then that only my plague thus far I count my gain, that she, that woman, that makes me sin, awards me pain. Love hurts. Who knew? Perhaps the Everly Brothers, Roy Orbison, or the Scottish band Nazareth, they all knew because they sang about it. Now, is this, as Don Patterson says, a wretched little number? I think not. But perhaps Don Patterson wasn't swayed by my man, Hyder Edward Rollins, who said about this, one should not expect a disappointed lover, real or feigned, always to express himself in the same way and with the same compliments, especially to a mistress who has betrayed him. I quite agree. But what about this last line? That she, that woman, that she that makes me sin, awards me pain. Sin, you may ask? Tootight Lautrec, Drag Laureate of the Sonnetarium and Sovereign Mistress over Rack. Sin? What sin is the narrator committing? Well, for that answer, we'll have to crisscross our way over to Sonnet 142. And as we crisscross our way over there, we'll stop for a little detour for a cocktail party vocabulary word, or two, actually. The first is chiasmus, C-H-I-A-S-M-U-S, which is a rhetorical or literary figure in which words, grammatical constructions, or concepts are repeated in reverse order in the same or modified form. much like my dress for this week, which is the negative of last week's dress. And if you haven't seen it, you can go back and look now. Chiasmus is similar to, but not exactly like, anadiplosis. A-N-A-D-I-P-L-O-S-I-S. Anadiplosis, which could also be a nice drag name for someone. Anadiplosis. Repetition of the last word or unit as the first word of the next. Literally, a doubling back on. So we see chiasmus immediately in the last line of 141 and the first line of 142 with the sin, and we see anadiplosis in the last word of line 1 on 142 and the first word of the second line. So chiasmus, anadiplosis. Let's take a look. And again, I'll be reading from, not from my splooged Penguin version, but from my G. Blakemore Evans New Cambridge Shakespeare. Sonnet 142. Well, I'll read the last few lines of, I'll read the couplet of 141 and then 142. Only my plague thus far I count my gain, that she that makes me sin awards me pain. Love is my sin, and thy dear virtue, hate, hate of my sin, grounded on sinful loving. Oh, but with mine compare thou thine own state, and thou shalt find it merits not reproving. Or, if it do, not from those lips of thine that have profaned their scarlet ornaments and sealed false bonds of love as oft as mine, robbed others' beds' revenues of their rents. Be it lawful, I love thee as thou lov'st those, whom thine eyes woo as mine importune thee. Root pity in thy heart, that when it grows, thy pity may deserve to pitied be. If thou dost seek to have what thou dost hide, by self-example mayst thou be denied. Okay, so the first quatrain. On the surface, again, we have the Petrarchan tradition of the lover bemoaning to the beloved. Well, I'll close this and open it if I need it. The lover bemoaning to the beloved, hey, you know what, I'm horny for you, but your virtue or your chastity or your whatever your unwillingness is to get together with me makes it feel like you hate me. So, okay, my sin is in loving you. Is that so wrong? I don't think so. And your virtue is in hating me, loving you, because resisting a horny suitor is supposed to make a woman seem virtuous. But, and we know from Sonnet 135, line 5, that it's a magnificently big but, that virtuous seeming resistance of my advances is grounded on sinful loving, we learn in the second line. So it's grounded on my sinful loving, which is my lust for you, or sinful loving, perhaps your sinful loving, you're doing the deed with somebody or some bodies else, and that's why you spurn my advances. And then we move on to the lines 3 and 4. But oh, with mine compare thou thine own state. Let's compare my sin with yours, because you're so innocent, right? It merits not reproving. But not so fast, lady, says the second quatrain. It merits not reproving. Sorry, I lost my place. But with mine compare thou thine own state, and thou shalt find it merits not reproving. Or if it do, okay, second quatrain, or if it do, oh, it do merit reproving. But you'll never hear it from your plump, moist, luscious lips that have sealed false bonds of love as oft as mine, and not just by speaking, but by kissing, and we all know what elsing, and robbed others' beds, revenues of their rents. My goodness, that's a pretty strong statement. And here is where some scholars contend that there's an argument to be made that the mistress is a prostitute. She steals men from their wives. She robs them, the wives, of what the men owe their marriage duty to be. And she also robs the wives of children because their men are spilling their seed into the mistress rather than into the wives' wombs. So I don't really buy the idea of a mistress as a prostitute in these poems, only because if she were, it seems that she might, if the narrator had some ready cash on hand, be quite a bit more inviting, shall we say. Which isn't to say that sex workers can't or shouldn't be more discriminating. Stormy Daniels, I'm looking at you. But given the sequence as a whole, the rest of the sonnets don't support this theory that she's a prostitute, in my opinion. So let's move along to the third quatrain. Be it lawful, which is simply just saying, it's a way of saying, well, if it's okay for you, be it lawful. If it's okay, I love thee as thou lovest those whom thine eyes woos, mine importune thee. So I'm just saying, as strongly as you like those other dudes, that's how strongly I am in love with you. And so you have to have pity on me. Please root pity in thy heart and love me. And when that happens, you'll know how much I suffer. And then you, that's right, you will be the one asking for pity from me. How's that for a chiasmic switcheroo? And then we move along to the couplet, which, chiasm of chiasms, if you dost hide, or if you withhold from me, if thou dost seek to have what thou dost hide, you're withholding love from me. And if you're seeking to have the kind of love that you're withholding from me with someone else, if you're seeking to have that kind of love but not with me, if you're withholding that from me and you're seeking to have it with someone else, by self-example mayst thou be denied. So if you withhold from me, if you don't show me the love that I so desperately need, I may deny you my love for you. Huh, because that's the example you've given. How about that? To which I say, yeah, how about that for an empty threat? Now, it doesn't seem like that's what's going to be happening anytime soon, but we'll let our narrator have his little delusions as he might. And we'll move along and ask ourselves, is there a gender? There certainly is. That's right. Keep it together. Is there a gender in 141 and 142? Well, 141, that she, that woman, that makes me sin, awards me pain. So, honk honk, there's a woman. And considering the chiasmic nature of 142 and 141, honk honk for both of them. It's the same person that the narrator is addressing. Dramatically, Edmondson and Wells give as a dramatic analogy Orlando to Ganymede, who is actually Rosalind in disguise in As You Like It. So look it up. I'll have to take their word for it. Narratively, what's going on here? Oof, is what's going on here. We come from sonnets 139 and 140, which is the Don't Make Me Say It sonnets, to 141 and 142, which is I'm Saying It, which is not a good look for our narrator as far as I'm concerned. These almost feel like a burn your bridges breakup sonnets, except without the explicit breakup part. He's still hanging on by the last little thread of dignity that he has. He's saying, I love you against my better judgment, and you don't love me, and I'm asking, so why are we still here? And you have to wonder, is it over? I mean, over? Well, we shall have to see. We still have 12 sonnets left, an even dozen. What could happen in those? Well, stay tuned. Meanwhile, you know the drill. The world really is full of wonder. Pay attention. I'm Tootight Lautrec. Until we meet again.